Good morning, good morning. Hello. How's everyone doing? Good. We're in November. We had a good, those of us who have any New York connections, we had a good election, good outcome. This is exciting. So we are in week 6, and today we have the pleasure and privilege of having Rhee come down from Seattle. And then we have one more art lecture this quarter in week 8 with Aaron Charpentier and Travis Neal. That will be virtual, but we'll all be here. But we'll be hearing from them from far away. I don't remember where they are, but they're far away. All right, so remember that there'll be a talk for an hour, and then we'll have Q&A. Please engage, ask questions, give ideas, and I'm going to have Zoya come up and introduce Rob.
All right, hello, welcome everyone to the art lecture series. My name is Zoya Skanke, and I'm an artist and student here at the Evergreen State College. Currently, I'm a part of Evergreen's Gateways for Incarcerated Youth program, an experience that has deeply informed my understanding of carceral systems, restorative justice, mutual aid, and accountability. This work extends to my independent learning contract that explores the pedagogy of visual studies, allowing me to synthesize my interest in art and hopefully empower others through both theory and practice. Today, I'm excited to introduce Rhee, an artist whose work with sculpture, performance, and critical writing explores the poetic and philosophical relationships between organic and human-made systems. Rhee is an assistant professor and chair of the Interdisciplinary Visual Art program in the School of Art, Art History, and Design at the University of Washington. His work has been exhibited locally at the Frye Museum, the Museum of Portland, and nationally at the Hunterdon Art Museum in New Jersey, White Columns in New York, and the Korean Cultural Center in Los Angeles. His most recent exhibit, Crossing at the Jacob Lawrence Gallery, include access to his research plot at the UW Farm. His work extends globally, opening smallish in Seoul, South Korea this coming January. His social practice of writings has been published in Art in America, Art Asia Pacific, Arcade, Columbia, a Journal of Arts and Letters, and Norda. Rhee employs bricolage to construct moments of impossibility, merging the hard edge of an object with the slow, unpredictable time of organic growth. He has described himself as a rubbernecker, someone compelled by an exaggerated curiosity, unable to look away from the strange and the morbid. Threaded through all of Rhee's projects is an intuitive interest in how boundaries between bodies, materials, and ideas generate new forms of intimacy and understanding. Whether through sculpture or text, his work invites viewers to reconsider relationships between control and surrender, structure and softness, the human and the more than human. Across these contexts, he remains deeply invested in acts of attention, the quiet observation of growth, the slow revelation of form, and the moral dimension of looking closely. His ongoing series, The Occupation of Uninhabited Spaces, focuses on gourds, whose unmistakable resemblance to humans starts with being some of the first domesticated plants. Each gourd is grown within a metal cage, its shape molded by the structure that confines it. The gourd skin bubbles and bloats to new forms around the melded metal, exposing empathy in our gaze as the form shifts from plant to flesh. The work challenges our perception of what it means to be a living thing, inviting us to consider the boundaries, both visible and invisible, that shape and restrict us in our daily lives. His work undoubtedly influences me moving forward as my own work has shifted to sculptural portraiture, adopting, sometimes hoarding discarded objects found around me and wrapping them tightly in folds and knots. To conclude, I would like to share a quote from Fire, Fungi, Soil, Vehicle, Mine, a performance exploring the combination of materials as a divination, an urgent call to the future. Quote, a future with more movement, a future with care and healing for the environment, a future with more social intensity, a harmonious future, a future with more light, location unspecified. Thank you for your presence, and please welcome me in joining Rhee.
Thank you so much, Zoya. That's going to be... Oh, there's someone's phone here. Oh, yeah. That's going to be hard to follow. I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to do anything as streamlined, clear, and direct as that. I think you'll see in the way I present my work, it's very meandering. So I feel so much. I feel so much gratitude for that, because that's the thing I'm always trying to figure out how to do when I'm applying for a grant or something. It's like, how do I talk about myself in these? So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So I'm gonna start with a reading of a short text. There's gonna be a slideshow. And then I'm going to go into a broader talk. So I promise that I'm going to talk about some of the images you see as the reading goes on. Oh, wait, no. Here we go. All right, so this is a text that I wrote. It's a short essay. It sort of like encapsulates some of the research that I have been doing alongside my studio practice, and in some ways it's not directly related, it's not topically related or necessarily related via subject matter, but in some ways it's a way of getting me and my experience, my thoughts to go in new directions. So I'm going to start with a quote from Yves Seguin, Laurent Olivier Lord, and Bruno Latour's Science is Politics by Other Means. Science enacts that at any point in time, society is made up of more actors than is assumed. Researchers connect events, features, and evolutions of society to new, unsuspected, or uncharacterized beings. These new beings are not so much socially constructed than produced, made visible at will, controlled thanks to the displacements and changes of scale performed by the laboratory. So this is the beginning of my text. In Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, the creature come to life is of, quote, gigantic stature, unquote, for practical as opposed to philosophical reasons. It is handmade. Remarkably, it is not dexterity alone that guides the choice, but speed, quote, frantic impulse, unquote. Now this is Frankenstein speaking, Dr. Frankenstein. As the minuteness of the parts formed a great hindrance to my speed, I resolved, contrary to my first intention, to make the being of gigantic stature, that is to say, about 8 feet in height and proportionably large, unquote. Even Frankenstein's creature is a product of the supply chain. Recent cinematic adaptations of Shelley's stories, such as Poor Things and Lisa Frankenstein, double down on the zany productivity embedded in the Frankenstein narrative. Affective labor eclipses free will as the main source of tension and conflict of the story. Unlike Shelley's brooding main characters, the parallel creatures and their creators in these contemporary versions are not in conflict with each other or themselves, but with the needy, exploitative world they occupy. This shift moves in tandem with another major shift. The new creatures are no longer conspicuously gruesome, but attractive. Absent the lumps and sutures of past imaginings, there is an elevated quality to these new beings. Equal parts corpse and corpus, the viewer/reader is left marveling, perhaps wondering, where have all the stitches gone? These exterior ameliorations add new chapters to the familiar story around the exploration of public life. Whereas in the original, the creature escapes Victor Frankenstein's makeshift laboratory only to be met with rejection and horror, the beings depicted in Poor Things and Lisa Frankenstein have little trouble fitting in. Though the canonical plot point of illicit creation remains, the creature is now more harbored than concealed, a kind of fetish or kink. In both stories, the creature's lack of humanity has become a productive possibility in the omnipresent service economy, an opportunity for wish fulfillment. In Poor Things, Bella Baxter finds kinship and vocation in a Parisian brothel, and, quote, the creature in Lisa Frankenstein artfully pantomimes various roles from confidant to entertainer, chauffeur, and boyfriend, all seemingly benefited by his inability to speak. Remarkable, believable, even preferable companions, they characterize the interweaving of alienation and affective customization in contemporary life. The creators themselves are not immune to the immense demand for immaterial labor. Quote, how tiring can it be, unquote, asks the productivity-addled stepmother in Lisa Frankenstein about Lisa's job in tailoring and alterations, to which Lisa responds, quote, eventually a callus just forms, unquote. As with Lisa, love disentangled from work seems unimaginable for Godwin Baxter, the Promethean surgeon and progenitor in Poor Things. Disemboweled and disfigured by his father's own surgical experiments on him as a child, Godwin's body is itself a monstrous callus, the hypertrophic response of a vexed and tattered point of contact. The creature's shift from patchwork ghoul to nip-tucked specimen is nested within another, perhaps more substantial revision. Frankenstein, the scientist, is now the one whose skin is cut and stitched, scarred by experimentation. Frankenstein, or Godwin Baxter, creates life whilst himself appearing undead. Seamlessness is life in an attention economy, and the monstrous progenitors of these contemporary Gothic tales, surgeon and seamstress Godwin Baxter and Lisa Swallows, are masters of the Promethean stitch. There is an AI quality to their deft handiwork, the power to produce live emoters from undead emotions, a supernatural seamlessness. The Promethean stitch is something miraculous. A problem of the flesh today is its ambivalent trajectory. Is it an antiquated and obsolete engagement format, a pleasurable vintage trinket, a problematic inheritance? The obvious answer of all of the above hesitates in the face of magnificent corporate technologies that can put together enhanced, novel, customizable realities in lightning speed. A multitude of "it's alive" moments attend us all. So much time is being spent in virtual society, in two-way mirrored experimental realities, it is difficult to think of an ethological context for the human being today. A key element of the Frankenstein narrative is the nomadic trajectory of life. And this is Frankenstein speaking, Dr. Victor Frankenstein, quote, "How dangerous is the acquirement of knowledge, and how much happier that man who believes his town to be the world," says Victor Frankenstein, reflecting upon the trajectory of his life. "When I found so astonishing a power placed within my hands, I hesitated a long time concerning the manner in which I should employ it. It is the promise of scientific progress that pushes Victor Frankenstein to action, and yet it is the mechanics of hospitality, how to live with his creation and the creations of his creation, that remain his challenge. Interactive, poetic, opportunistic, the work of communion, of not inventing connection, but making it, exists for Frankenstein only as a tragic and irretrievable alternative. Victor, in the obsessive act of creation, cuts himself off from the world, a, quote, generous and self-devoted being, unquote. In contrast, the reclusive creators in Poor Things and Lisa Frankenstein experience the exposure of their creations to the outside world as a step in their own transformation. Their stories inhabit a world in which the creature is spectacular, omnipresent, and oddly mundane. The societal integration of their otherworldly agents, and this is now going back to that first quote from Latour and Seguin, quote, unsuspected or uncharacterized beings, unquote, provokes a new vision, an old reflex. I wished to be participated, Frankenstein's creature laments in his last words. The tie, the bond, perhaps the stitch, but not seamless. So in this text that I'm writing, there's like some images, some of the images that you saw at the beginning of the kind of composited body, and then there's this section on compositing. Compositing. Of the many stitching technologies available today, photogrammetry, a method of creating 3D models using concentric rings of photographs and a process of mathematical reconstruction, has the compelling benefit of being straightforward, cheap, and computationally manageable. It is widely used in mapping and archiving for its documentary ability to create seamless recreations of objects, artifacts, and architectural sites reliably and accurately. In addition, photogrammetry's mode of replicating reality via interpolation is easy to grasp and thus remand. The renderings shown earlier are from an ongoing series of 3D composites using photogrammetry in a way that shifts its parameters. Instead of defining or characterizing single bodies or sites, multiple bodies are collaged according to their superposition in XYZ space. So, oh, thanks. So this is this mind mapping software that I've been using to give talks. I like it because this is the way that I talk to myself, and so I don't really have to translate so much between the way I think and the way I share my thinking. This talk is okay. We're gonna go. Whoa. That's interesting. A composite. Okay, let's go forward and then go back. Aha, okay. Let's just do this. You're going to see the sausage being made here. Okay, here. Well, let's just do this. This is how I wanted to start. This is the first slide. This talk is called Sessile. I'm going to get into the term sessile maybe a little bit later, but I loved that thing that Zoya said about plant to flesh, because I think I'm going to talk a lot about bricolage. And the kind of thought I had, this sort of phrase I had in my head was bricolage is the practice of thinking through and with other bodies. So to do that, there is this plant to flesh transformation, but also flesh to plant that is sort of interpreted via this process as being a dialogue. So, and sessile is a term used in plant biology to talk about a plant's essential rootedness and the ways in which plants interact with their environment and stressors in their environment within the context of their inability to escape. So, gourds, I've been working with gourds for like 15 years. I love gourds. Oftentimes I'll get asked, why do you work with gourds? And then I give a reason, and then I feel bad about it because I don't have one reason, I have 100 reasons, and some of them are really erudite, and some of them are like super inchoate. And there's a way in which working with the same material over and over is kind of corny, and yet it's also like honest and reflects a way of knowing that comes from exposure, experience, and then this idea of like trying to really not understand, but be able to overlap. This idea of, I said like superposition in XYZ space, like that can be like a literal process, or it can be in some ways like a kind of metaphorical, ideological superposition. So the thing I wanted to show is like this here. This is like what a lot of my sketches look like. They are, I was at Shaw's house, and Shaw had this book comes from Sloterdijk's, Peter Sloterdijk's, I think it's Bubbles, but Sloterdijk's talking, well, I'm not gonna go into it, but this is me like connecting, like making the visual connection between like bubbles and plant cells, and trying to think about the ability of plants to create a kind of society with each other. But a lot of my sketches are like this, in that I'm thinking about the system and the formal system and how to work with it, as opposed to the specific decisions being made in the work. That often happens in a kind of improvisatory way in the process of making. I think the best way, or not the best way, one way to talk about how I came to working with gourds is to talk about my own process into bricolage. This is a kind of timeline I kind of laid out of my own work, in some ways to talk about it, but also to think about it for myself. So right around, we're gonna zoom to right around here. This is a piece I made between undergrad and grad school. I was living at home. I went from having like a wood shop and a metal shop and lots of tools at my disposal to just, not having any specific tools other than like the hand tools that I bought. And something that interested in me was, I started making work from this found object practice. I thought of myself as a found object sculptor. And I was trying to make this armor, this suit of armor that I had based off of this object I saw at the Metropolitan Museum, and it was about inheritance and failed inheritance, and there were these like, it was a child-sized suit of armor, so there were these like magnificent, like tiny gauntlets made of leather. And I really wanted to recreate that leather. And somehow in trying to recreate that object, I was at the supermarket and I saw eggplants and I was like, eggplant skins can be a kind of leather. And I think I was really interested. I think at the time it was like Takashi Murakami had been making these Louis Vuitton bags. And I like did not, like my conversation with leather was not about leather as a commodity. It was about leather as an experience, like a kind of tactile experience. So the eggplant skin, I thought, got me a way to have leather without having the conversations about leather I didn't want to have. But something happened beyond the kind of concrete usefulness of the material, which was that like, it kind of changed the way I thought about found objects, where like a eggplant is in some ways a pretty straightforward found object in that it's unitary. There's like a kind of ideal. They come in series. You can buy them. You can buy them in like a non-specialty shop. So in some way, but then each one is also a living product. So like if you have a series of them, they all change differently over time. And so that became a really interesting way forward for me as a bricolage sculptor to be like, I was thinking of it mostly in terms of formal qualities. Like here's a found object that changes over time as opposed to a plastic bucket, which I would use. Plastic waste bin, things from the 99-cent store, hose clamps, coins. This term bricolage as a form of creativity, making do with whatever is at hand. Something that like I started to think about is the way that bricolage as a concept or a process has shifted for me. I think originally I came to bricolage because I came to art making in college. I came to it very accidentally. I got a work-study job at the sculpture in the wood shop, and then through that process started taking sculpture classes and found myself kind of in the sculpture building all the time making work, and that's how I got into this field. But I think because of that, when I was fulfilling my requirements, like I would go to the art supply store, and it was a very stressful, disempowering experience because like I didn't have a background in drawing, so I didn't know like what pencils to use or what erasers to use or what paper to use. Things that seemed like very foundational. I was just like an experience of how much I didn't know. So I think for that reason, I was much more confident or curious or integrated sort of emotionally with objects that seem like non-object art objects, objects from everyday life. As I started making, as I continued to make work with the eggplant skins, I started to think about them in terms of anthropological objects and trying to think about in some ways, like how it is that objects, ideas, cultures are transmitted through time. I know that's a kind of abstract thing to think about, but it became really concrete because the materials I was working with required quite a bit of institutional support just to continue surviving. And people asked, like, are these pieces archival? Are they made to disintegrate? I started reading about contemporary art conservation and thinking like, we have gourds and leather products, animal skins that are like thousands of years old. And material is in some ways like a kind of non-institutional image of continuity, but really like the support structure that brings something from the past into the future is people and the kind of the cultural institutions that guard things, basically, that consider them heritage. So I was thinking about this. I was reading this book, Apparitions of the Self. It's a Buddhist autobiography, and maybe do I get into? Yeah, something that really fascinated me in reading about Buddhist autobiography, and this was this character, this person, Jingmei Limpa, who is part of this group of Tibetan Buddhists called the Treasure Discoverers. And what was interesting about them was, like in Tibetan Buddhism, you have this very kind of direct lineage form of Buddhism, where it's like your hierarchy is all based off your proximity to the original teacher. So like if there were 10 teachers between you or one teacher between you, that defines like how authentic your practice is. Jingmei Lingpa was interesting because he was a part of this group called the Treasure Discoverers, who claimed to have an end run around this direct transmission system through what he called indirect transmission. So like he would, him and other treasure discoverers, they would find either in a dream or in objects in real life what they found to be new texts from the Buddha, basically. And by finding these texts in the world or in dreams, they claimed a kind of indirect, direct transmission. A lot of this stuff doesn't really relate like super concretely to the work I do, but it sort of opened my mind up into, to think about transmission as not like a simple or direct mode as a contested site, transmission as a contested site, yeah. This is the piece Fire, Fungi, Soil, Vehicle, Mine that Zoya talked about. I wanted to put this in here because, oftentimes, like I think something that I've been really wanting to get at is like, bricolage, like oftentimes bricolage, the description of bricolage as a practice starts from the direct material object and what that material object can become. But like because of when we're working with found objects, when we're working with a pre-existing culture, as we all do, some of what you're working with is not the material thing, but not the material thing in your hand, but the material thing that's transmitted through culture. So, this project, it started with this practice that my dad used to do, where he would do these fortune-telling. I guess it's just fortune-telling. Like he would have people draw a snake, a body of water, a mountain, a road, and snake, body of water, mountain, road, and a tree. And all of these related to archetypal figures in a Confucian worldview. And this process was something that he was actually really good at. And my mom would, her friend, she would find people and he would read their fortunes, and people would kind of seek him out for this. And I remember talking to my dad about this, and he was like, oh yeah, I learned when I was really young, I remember learning this process. I got lost and I found myself at the foot of this big staircase, and at the top was there was this monastery, and I went up, and this Buddhist monk taught me this process. I was like, whoa, this is incredible! Like what a heritage. And so when my dad, I brought my dad into grad school to do this process, to read fortunes for my friends, and what I found was that it was kind of very mixed. And something I was thinking about was like the visual heritage between my father and my mom's friends, or people of his generation, and my friends, was really discordant. we didn't share the same kind of touch points that were accessed through these materials. So I thought, like, I need to rewrite this project for myself using, I guess, materials or agents that I felt like really better fit the world that we inhabit today. So from from tree, mountain, body of water, snake, and road, I got fire, fungi, soil, vehicle, mine. I did these as performances in New York, where people would draw a drawing, and then I would use this. Let's see if I have it. Everyone would cut a piece of their drawing out. I put it in this developing tray with bakasdi, which is like Korean Red Bull, and I put these like head massagers, and they would like crawl around, and they would choose something, and we would use that to kind of answer one of these questions. So there's a future with more movement, a future with care. So these were the intentions that we as a group put out, and then these were the landscapes we used to kind of get ourselves towards that future. So I told my dad about this, and I was like, Dad, and this was during the pandemic, so I was like, just really excited to be engaging in a kind of shared social space. And I told my dad, Dad, I'm gonna do this thing, and my mom was there, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing the process that Dad learned from the monk, in Korea. And she was like, he didn't learn that from a monk. We were taking this tour of Europe with these other Korean families, and the bus driver taught us this thing just to keep us busy because we're on the bus for so long, and your dad was just really good at it. And I think it's that, in some ways, like that form of inauthenticity, authenticity of desire. I think it's all strung together in a way that sort of like shouldn't have surprised me. And I think maybe this will be like another definition of bricolage. This comes from this text by Veronique Altglass, where she's looking at this theorist Roger Bastide. I'll just read it. And basically, no, I'll just read it. Roger Bastide conceptualized bricolage as a response to holes in collective memory. It is thus about replacing something missing. As such, bricolage can be seen as a quest for coherence rather than a celebration of eclecticism. So I found this really helpful because I thought like bricolage, and what Bastide says is like, it's not an accident that like Levi-Strauss, when he's conceptualizing bricolage, is dealing with a post-colonial practice. In fact, bricolage is necessarily a post-colonial practice, and it's not about like this kind of postmodern like collage of identity. It's about like having an identity that is necessarily fractured and trying to make a coherent whole out of like the kind of exploded leftovers of a culture. It's a kind of dramatic way of thinking about it, but it's also a way that kind of really resonated with me in terms of like what the process is trying to do. I thought this was a good thing because of the holes, the cutting. Lastly, this is a video I want to show. I'll just show it and then I'll talk about it. So, I was with my mom. My mom's retired. She was a jeweler, and sort of like a way that she's kind of like continued to, yeah, like remain in that identity is she would go into the city and pick through silver scrap to try to find things for her friends. And I was with her one day and I was filming it, and what I was really interested in was the way my mom uses her hands to engage her own attention. So it's like she's sort of like, you can see her like moving light around things, like she's trying to get herself to see the thing in front of her, and it's not like a given, like that there is a really physical practice to seeing the thing in front of you, and it involves this kind of like interplay between like the thing and its, I mean, maybe this is very like phenomenological, but like the thing in the way you see it and the thing in the ways that you want to see it, or that you might be able to see it. And sometimes that can be seen as really kind of highfalutin academic stuff, but I think it's embedded in so many material practices. Okay, am I running? Okay, let's go to this. Okay. How do I do this? It's too fancy for my own good. Maybe I'll go to this. Let's see. Should I close it? Okay, I'll close it. I'll go to this. I'll jump back in. Maybe we can add, if anyone has, is it okay to do a question while this loads? Oh, okay. I don't know. Oh no, why is it? I'm gonna, maybe I'll quit it and reopen it.
I can ask a question.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Perhaps you could maybe say a little more about superposition, how you're thinking about superposition.
Yeah, here I might need to go do it via the web interface. So I had originally thought, like my curiosity about superposition, like maybe it's a Wi-Fi issue. Let's see. Yes. One sec. Okay. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So superposition started just in terms of like those original images that were like digital composites, and very straightforwardly, it was a way of creating a different form of collage, and like what I would do is I would take a scan and then like the first one I showed where there was like a skeleton and me. It was like I was like, oh, like me and this skeleton occupy a similar amount of volume. So a photogrammetry vision of us is like I could use superposition to stitch these two things together. So like do one scan and then move that thing and then put myself there and do another scan. I thought it was really interesting to think, I mean, number one, I just thought it looked cool. But two, I thought it was interesting to think about collage as a temporal practice. And the way to do that is through the way that I had experienced it was through superposition and this desire for like there to be this coherent narrative via superposition or something. Yeah, thanks for the question. Okay. All right. Okay. Oh no. Sorry, I think maybe it's, okay. I think maybe there's a internet lag. I think I'm gonna do something. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do something a little different because I think it's. All right, sorry, folks. All right, maybe if you have like motion sensitivity, maybe just don't look because I'm gonna be driving around the map. Oh. Okay. Oh man. Okay, here we go. So yeah, I guess one thing, I guess a place to come back in was like, yeah, I'm thinking about transmission. I'm thinking about gourds or I've been working with gourds, and something like in the past, like most of my works kind of in this vein, like this is the Occupations of Uninhabited Space series, where I would make these armatures. I call them forecasts, and I would send them out to farms where farmers would grow them, and I would get them back like a couple months later. And something about that process that I really paid attention to was the ways in which that put me into this like different kind of time frame for making my work. I couldn't make the process happen at a different time because I just was tied to the seasonal growth process, and so I internalized this kind of seasonal practice of making my structures like around May, June, sending them out to farms in July. The farmers would grow the gourds. I'd get them back in probably September, October. I'd wash them, and then I'd decide what to do with them. Sometimes they were really interesting, like interactions between the fruit and the model, and sometimes they were just nothing. But I kind of did that process for about 8 years, and I was thinking about growing them myself, but I didn't have that. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have any land. It was just like this thing that I had thought would be really interesting to do one day, and then. As it happened, a friend of mine was like, they were like, I have this farm plot in Colorado. They ran a CSA, and they suggested that they could grow some gourds for me. So it was the first time after a decade of working with this material that I had like sort of like tried to see myself in connection with, that I was actually like touching the thing in its kind of growth process. And I think something that really surprised me was it really, I mean, I don't know why it should surprise me, but it really shifted my sense of like what was actually happening, what I was engaging with in working with these gourds. This is like one of the material studies from that moment where I incised on the skin of the gourd. These are a bunch of other material studies. And like in doing these material studies, I really I was basically just trying to understand what I could do with the gourd, and I like stapled it. Some of these are quite aggressive, you know, and I was really surprised at how resilient the fruit was. The other thing I was curious about was like, I sort of was reflecting on what I was trying to do, and like, I started from a very literal place where I was like, a gourd is a vessel. What if I tried to grow the gourd into a kind of different kind of vessel? And I think in getting really literal with what I was doing, it helped me think about like why is it that gourds or plants can do this in the first place? And this kind of brings us back to sessile, the concept sessile. So I came across these two terms, edaphocotropism and inoculation. These are from biology, I think, plant biology, but basically edaphocotropism is like the thing that it's always so cool to see in the world, where like a plant engulfs like a structure, and like according to what I found out in my reading was that plants can do this because they lack an adaptive immune system. So when they come up against something, they don't necessarily, because it's so different from what they are, they don't attack it as a foreign body. They just engulf it. And the way in which it's different from a digestive process is if you were to cut the wood away, the metal wouldn't be corroded. Another term is inoculation, which this is like a kind of example of inoculation, where two trees, sometimes of even different species, will grow into each other. And what'll happen is they won't just grow into each other and form like a sculptural bond. They will become a singular vascular system. So they will share nutrients. They will act as one organism, but if they drop like seeds, they'll drop their separate seeds. So they retain their DNA. And I thought this was really fascinating because I was like, it breaks all the rules of what I think sovereignty of a body is. And I think, I was talking to this lab, the Frank lab, who works in grafting at Cornell, and I was like, oh yeah, I read that it's about the lack of adaptive immune systems, and I thought there's something metaphorically very powerful about immunity and the kind of self-other thing. And they were like, yeah, it doesn't really fit because like plants are always trying to figure out like what they're making in contact with. It's just that the way that they characterize self and other is really kind of complex and mysterious to us. So like, you might be able to graft like a tomato. You might have an easier job grafting a tomato onto a pepper plant than a tomato onto another tomato, just because of like the kind of reading that they're doing between the lines. Yeah, like, so when I was thinking about inoculation, like what they said was that what it is that because plants are sessile, because they're necessarily rooted, when they come in contact with something, they can't run away, and so they have to address it. And their adaptive strategies for addressing the things they come in contact with are just really different from the adaptive strategies that animals have. And that, for me, was like a real opening for the show that I put on at the Jacob Lawrence Gallery called Crossings. So these are the pieces that you saw in the slideshow. This collection of sculptures made from gourd sherds. A lot of these come from gourds that would grow in those armatures that kind of didn't amount to anything specifically. So I would cut them apart, and I collected them for many years, and then try to like reconstitute them into a kind of form or body. In addition, this is another one. In addition, okay, I have 5 more minutes. I started growing. I got a plant, a farm plot at the UW farm. 1,000. That was like basically the same square footage as the gallery. I started growing my own plants, my own gourds, and trying to do these kind of grafting experiments with them. Trying to graft the fruit together, the plants together. Apparently, this is something that that championship pumpkin growers do. They'll plant like 4 or 5 plants in proximity. They'll get all the vines together. They'll splice them together, and then they'll cut the fruits from all but one, so that all 4 plants are feeding the same fruit. I mean, like, yeah, and like this. I mean, this is the question, right? So something kind of serendipitous happened, or maybe not serendipitous in that it shouldn't be expected, but more serendipitous in that it wasn't planned. I was at the UW farm. I thought of it as a production site. Maybe that's just the way. Yeah, I come from I'm a product of a capitalist society. So I was like, this is my production site. But I'm at the farm, and this is like the farm crew. I think my second or third time I was there, they were doing the graduation ceremony for the farm crew, and there was so much genuine fellowship and community. I was so moved by seeing it that I thought, like, I can't just be here using this as a production site. I need to kind of like engage with the farm itself. So I started going to these volunteer sessions and helping with the harvesting. My kids came along. And in one of those volunteer sessions, someone said, like, I don't know if you know about Korean natural farming or Jadam, but if you don't know about indigenous microorganisms, Korean liquid fertilizer, like, you should look it up. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And basically, this book, Jadam, Organic Farming, outlines the use of, you take cuttings from the plant, ferment them, and feed them back into the plant. And it's a way of creating low-cost agricultural inputs. And I thought there was something super, direct, beautiful, and kind of metaphysical about it. So that became this part of the show where these are ferments that I made from the gourd plants themselves that are currently still fermenting. These are blown glass vessels, also from the gourds, and these are then fed back into the plants. So there's a kind of nice generational quality to it, like a sourdough starter. This is some gourds being grown in the vessel. Oh, and then these are 2 other vessels, one with seawater, and this is rocks, natural mineral water. So, like, in full disclosure, like, this is me experimenting with the material process as opposed to claiming any high agricultural knowledge. This is me trying to understand these inputs and kind of engage with them both as kind of like literal inputs and perhaps something more than just a literal input. And then lastly, this corpus idea. So that was this is like the book that I talked about. This was the first text I read from. But like my body of work right now is kind of like engaging with these central kind of ring of ideas and seeing how they interact with each other. I think that's 12:30. Right? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good place to kind of transition to questions. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
I have a hard time paying all the way attention in any space, even when I'm at home watching something.
No.
I was hanging on onto as many words as I could, right? One, well, this will probably be the one afterward. Where can we find your work? And there was something you said. I lost it. I'm so sorry. Oh, when you showed your mom's hands and the practice of touching in order to see, and it made me think of, in so many cultures, even when it comes to, someone being born blind or becoming blind, it's like when a baby is first born or 2 months or something like that, they still touch your face, like just to feel you, And so when you said that she was flipping them in order for the light to hit it or catch different angles, and she kind of would like separate them according to how it felt to her. I guess that was just incredible to witness and hear. Maybe that's it. So where can we find your work?
I'm going to have a show in Portland this summer as part of Converge 45. So I think it opens in August of this summer at S.E. Cooper. But I wanted to, I wrote down touching in order to see. That's like the perfect way to say it. And I think of course I didn't I think in some ways what's nice about giving these talks is it's a way of reclaiming what I haven't claimed in the past. It wasn't until 2 years ago that I thought oh, actually I come from I make sculpture because my mom has this. I'm a bricoleur because my mom was a bricoleur, and I just thought of her as not an artist because of some weird division in my head. But then I read this book. It's Archive and Repertoire, and it talks about the archive and repertoire as different modes of capturing and holding knowledge. And I thought once I was able to think about the repertoire as a way of producing knowledge, I thought oh, this repertoire, this way of touching to look, touching to see, I learned that repertoire. I didn't learn it from a book. I learned it from just watching. So I wish I could have I wish I had the foresight to know that it was knowledge beforehand, but I'm glad I'm here eventually. Yeah.
Speaking of how farmers make the super big pumpkins, have you ever thought about making your own super big super gourd yourself? Considering your other work with working with wireframes and stuff, would you ever dip your toes into that field where you make the super gourd and wrapped around with chicken wiring or stuff like that?
At the beginning, if you asked me that at the beginning of this summer, I would have said yes. That is where I want to be. But then I think getting into this Jadam organic farming. What's really interesting about it is it's it's using, creating your own inputs for agriculture. And there's kind of philosophical framework, which is basically he argues that farming should be a thing that you don't need a lot of money to do, right? But farming has become so captured by enormous corporations where you buy the seeds, the input, the pesticides, and the machinery that it kind of takes it takes one out of the process and puts one kind of into this kind of death spiral, and a lot of those. A lot of the championship pumpkin growing, I think, involves a ton of. It's a kind of input intensive thing. So I think what I've shifted to is thinking about grafting as a sculptural process, where I thought if I can graft the fruit to each other, this is where I got really excited about this in osculation thing where I was like, just ideologically, like if the plant can merge with another plant, there's just something so beautiful about that. I don't know. I think I was like, I've become now much more enraptured with that image of this sort of like multi-part body that like kind of works together. Yeah.
So rather than so rather than the like a big super collective, it's rather kind of like the smaller intertwined individual gourds. Would you say
Yeah,
that?
like this, like back to Sloterdijk, like this thing. Sloterdijk goes on to say like he has this kind of, he calls it the spherology, where it's like maybe in pre-modern times, like the world was a circle, and then you have globalization, the globe, and then you get to bubbles. And the thing that he says about bubbles is like bubbles are a network of spheres that are always in flux, and so they're always trading. They're trading air with each other to create like a stable system. So it's an unstable, stable system, and I think he uses that to imagine a different kind of institutional being or democratic structure of society. So I was literally like, oh yeah, like that's what I'm trying to imagine, this like metastable system of bodies. Yeah. Little bubbles of gourds. Yeah, and then the vines, like the vines that tell the story of their inosculation.
I had two questions, if that's
Sure.
all right. First one was, you were talking about your dad and his fortune telling, and he had snake, body of water, mountain, road, tree. What was the list that you had kind of
Yeah.
in turn created?
I have to find the thing because this was a few years ago, and then sometimes I mess it up. Like in the structure I don't think any of you guys are going to meet my dad and get your fortune told, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything. But it's like snake is the child, mountain is the man, tree is the woman, road is the life, and reservoir is the body of water. And so for me, I was like those really rigid frameworks don't really speak. Number one, a lot of those things just don't really speak to the world that I feel like I inhabit. So I was like, instead of the snake, I replaced snake with fire. Where I was like, this is a living being. This is something that's alive, but whose living, whose like life force is much more, I don't know, transitory. It's not as like solid. I replaced tree for fungi, or I replaced tree and mountain for fungi and soil. So things that sort of like are related but are much more enmeshed with each other. They're in some ways interchangeable. Road for vehicle, in part because I thought like maybe instead of infrastructure we have modes of passage. And then mine, I was like, I don't think we have reservoirs anymore. I don't think we have these beautiful sources of wealth. I think we have things that are always already dirty, because the reservoir is how big your reservoir is, how much money you're going to have in your life. So like it's still a schematic, but that was the schematic that I used for my process.
Yeah, thank you. And I was also wondering if you have a favorite gourd, either in general or for your art specifically, if you have a favorite.
So like the gourds that I grew, does this make you guys dizzy? A little bit. Like these gourds, okay. The gourds I grew on the plot, there were two gourds, two types. This one's called a Taihu, and the other one's a Corsican. They're both from the Kitazawa Seed Company which my friend told me about. They're like this heirloom Japanese, Asian American seed purveyor that were like, the longest standing Asian American seed purveyors in the country. Like, there's a beautiful story to it. But honestly, like, I don't know if there really is, beyond the kind of brand of the Kitazawa, I don't know how much specificity there really is in the heirloom seed. And so, like, in some ways, I think about this kind of favorite gourd as something maybe in the future, like something that I got really excited about with like the liquid fertilizers is like it's a way of engaging with the thing in perpetuity as opposed to the thing in a single season. So to have like this kind of repertoire that goes from gourd to gourd over years and that can be passed on, that to me is where the gourd exists, or the thing that I'm really excited about. That's where it exists, in the kind of transfer. And actually, this is when I got kind of caught up in the thing. There was a quote that I wanted to read. It's from Gilbert Simondon, and I think it kind of relates to a couple of things that people brought up. So I want to read it. Parts of the reality of groups is made of images, materialized as drawings, statues, monuments, garments, tools, and machines, as well as turns of phrase, formulas like proverbs that are true verbal images, akin to slogans. Such images ensure the cultural continuity of groups and are constant intermediaries between their past and future. They are both vehicles of experience and knowledge, as well as specific modes of waiting. I love that. Like this notion of that's what I'm thinking about, like a mode of waiting, a way of like re-engaging our relationship to time and sort of like making it more active. Yeah.
Hey, you were talking a lot about like Promethean themes earlier on, and the idea of fusion and stitching and creation, controlled creation, and I was wondering if there's like kind of an inverse of that, like during the decay process, is there control you can have, and like in what way would that like relate you to a creator? Because like you were kind of like a Godric tier gourds. So
yeah.
But you were talking about the organic and about like the sensation of leather through eggplants, and that made me start thinking of decay.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Same with splitting, because you were talking about fusing.
Wait, say that last part.
Splitting.
Splaying.
Like, yeah, instead of.
Yeah. Maybe I'm gonna try, and then maybe I'm gonna get your email, and then I'll try again. But like the thing that it brings to mind is like so I'm working with this graduate student, Mariam Debazorgi, and we're talking. We're trying to think about bricolage in relationship to idealism, and one of the things that we were talking about yesterday was that like oftentimes when Levi-Strauss like formulates the bricoleur, he relates it, he contrasts it with the engineer. The engineer kind of always is project-based and is using the right tools for the job. That assumes that there's a kind of moment of blank slate beginning, whereas the bricoleur is always medias res. They always have the stuff they had from the past, and they're using their collection of odds and ends to address the thing in front of them. So they're not necessarily project-driven. They're more like trying to solve a problem. And so oftentimes it gets bifurcated where like the engineer is like the Promethean idea, the idealist, and the bricoleur is the kind of on-the-ground realist. But I think what's more interesting is that like the bricoleur is also working on an idea. They're working toward the world. They're just working in a way that perhaps, but that maybe their plans can't be directly built by like a builder or something. That the bricoleur is trying to build an ideal world with the things that kind of exist around them. I think that relates in that like this idea of there's like decay and there's erasure. And I think like what I want to say is like when I find erasure in my practice, I guess I want to engage that kind of questioningly. I think it's like that notion of the engineer, like the blank slate is a site of erasure. There is, and then like, whereas like decay there's interestingly in that Simondon quote, like right before it, there's this notion of like prophecy as a seed, like that like decomposition is just like a necessary part of a cycle of change and recreation. So I think about decomposition as like just like the evening of composition. That's his phrase, Simondon's phrase. Yeah, but email me and because I like that question. That's really, yeah.
This is going back to the beginning to your quote about Lisa Frankenstein and Poor Things. I wanted to know a little bit more because it was. I'm trying to form this question as best as I can because it's compared to the original book of Frankenstein, and then you compare it to the Poor Things and Lisa Frankenstein, where you called them contemporary works, though they kind of fit into the more modern image of commercialized horror, if that makes sense, where it's kind of the elements are there, but it feels declawed in the sense of where it fits to appeal to the mainstream audience, to where it no longer has the uncomfortable of the rot and the decay of Frankenstein's creature and or the actions of Victor Frankenstein himself. And I wanted to know more about your thoughts.
That's interesting. And I know that there are 2 new Frankenstein films. I'm excited to see them.
The Guillermo Toro one.
And then Bride by Maggie Gyllenhaal. Well, I will say like I can't speak with any knowledge on horror as a genre. It's not something that I have a lot of background in, and I think for me that the kind of shift from the kind of ghoulish, grotesque monster to the sexy specimen that I'm interested in. I see that as like about like the way that the undead is experienced in contemporary culture, like the undead as being as going from the kind of conspicuously gruesome to the conspicuously optimal. That like there's something undead with things that are too optimized. And so it's like what's gross about the monster in, I think, much more so in Poor Things than in Lisa Frankenstein, but what's gross about the creature is that their perfection is grotesque. Their like seamlessness is grotesque. And that's the flip that I was interested in, and I think
the inversion, kind of the beautification of the decay. The beautification in terms of where it's it's hard to describe because it's like beautification of the of perfection, like to the point where it's grotesque in the sense of like it is quite comically like ghoulish
Yeah.
in the sense of like it's hard to describe because it's such a with those films, especially modern films, because it's like because it's not for all modern horror. I should say, I should preface that. It is mostly from what I've seen. It is the beautification, like the ugliness of perfection. I feel like is more so like at least I feel like that's kind of shown in older films such as like I would say Jennifer's Body and Ginger Snaps maybe, but that's more so solely on the focus of the tragedy of like of the teenage girl, pretty much the societal standard of you're forced to be kind of in the perfected role or you will be kind of eaten alive by society and as like most cases high school as a whole.
Well,
you
look,
know.
thank you. Yeah, this is like a beginning point. So yeah, I'll look into those. Thank you. Yeah, and maybe.
You had off and on have been mentioning, different theories and stuff, and so I wanted to see, would you say you're particularly or specifically engaging with like a Gutierrez's rhizometric construction of originality and how things connect?
I never directly read Deleuze and Guattari. I mean, maybe can you what's the word? Can you pitch me something and then I'll see?
Yeah, well, he proposes like rhizometric idea of creating originality as an alternative to a like hierarchical. So it's more about interconnected nodes producing new content instead of a like derivative iteration model, I guess. And it just kind of worked well into the system you had been describing.
Oh.
Yeah, it's based on plant rhizometric roots.
And like a potato is like a rhizome, like you cut it and then, I haven't read. Oh wait, and the first part of the question is like, is about like theories of self, right? Yeah. Yeah. My guess is that Simondon, like I'm reading this book, Imagination and Invention, and my guess is that Simondon's going to address Deleuze and Guattari within it, but I mean, like yes, I'm definitely engaging with the plant as a metaphor for my own physical and intellectual being, and the way ideas arise. The thing that I like about Simondon is that, like, in some ways, like, the way he talks about images is, I like the way that they engage with the human system. So images as a way of, like an image as a way of producing elongating waiting, an image as a way of corralling desire, an image as a way of managing anticipation. So like I am certainly interested in like these like cycles of like creating and being created by. But I mean that's as much as I can say. I haven't really, yeah.
Another question I had is you talked about and you play a lot with continuity and this idea of connection, and it got me thinking about Boutai and his idea of continuity and discontinuity, particularly continuity being only achievable in death, as we're all dead is the only time we can be continuous with each other while we exist in discontinuity, but seek it in life and try to achieve it through transgression of images and sacred worship. So I guess I just wondered if you had ever played with, as opposite to your kind of working together of systems and images and gourds, if you had ever worked around ideas of discontinuity and separation.
Whoa. I mean, I've never thought about that, but that's really interesting. I mean, I don't know. That's awesome. Maybe for the sake of the recording, how would that work?
I don't know.
Yeah. So like, yeah, because I can theorize continuity because I feel like my existence is discontinuous. But he's saying, so because, yeah, in some ways, like you theorize continuity because death is a non-experiential realm, right? So then why would you theorize discontinuity if your experience, I mean, I think about my experience as discontinuous. I think like, yeah, this kind of, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that like inherent, I mean, okay, yeah, maybe I'm finding a way. Like, yeah, maybe the thing I liked about that Bastide vision of bricolage is that it starts with discontinuity and aims for continuity, but always imagines that continuity, coherence, I guess I'm melding those two, but that those two things are always in tension. So I think discontinuity, I mean, like, maybe a way of addressing it is like, the reason why I don't give talks in PowerPoint is because it's too linear, and I just don't feel like I fit in this format, like my experience of my own work or the way I think about it, and so like it is. Oh no. Let's see. I know. Yeah, discontinuity. Like, is spatial. Is this like a discontinuity? In some ways, I'm like, yeah, this is discontinuous because these are all These are like simultaneous timelines that interact via concepts. So I don't know. Yeah, I have to think about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the connection back to the bricolage and what you're talking about. That worked well.
Thanks.